Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 7. Okay. There is a chapter summary by Srila Prabhupada. Chapter 7, the activities of King Bharata. In this chapter, the activities of King Bharat Maharaj, the emperor of the whole world, are described. Bharat Maharaj performed various ritualistic ceremonies, Vedic yajnas, and satisfied the Supreme Lord by his different modes of worship. In due course of time, he left home and resided in Haridwar and passed his days in devotional activities. Being ordered by his father, Lord Rishabhadeva, Bharat Maharaj married Panchajani, the daughter of Vishwarupa. After this, he ruled the whole world peacefully. Formerly, this planet was known as Ajanabha, and after the reign of Bharat Maharaj, it became known as Bharata Varsha. Bharat Maharaj begot 5 sons in the womb of Panchajani, and he named the sons Sumati, Rashtrabhrita, Sudarshana, Avarana, and Dhumraketu. Bharata Maharaj was very rigid in executing religious principles and following in the footsteps of his father. He therefore ruled the citizens very successfully. Because he performed various yajnas to satisfy the Supreme Lord, he was personally very satisfied. Being of undisturbed mind, he increased his devotional activities unto Lord Vasudeva. Bharat Maharaj was competent in understanding the principles of saintly persons like Narada, and he followed in the footsteps of the sages. He also kept Lord Vasudeva constantly within his heart. After finishing his kingly duties, he divided his kingdom among his 5 sons. He then left home and went to the place of Pulaha, known as Pulahashrama. Pulahashrama. There he ate forest vegetables and fruits and worshipped Lord Vasudeva with everything available. Thus he increased his devotion toward Vasudeva, and he automatically began to realize further his transcendental blissful life. Due to this highly advanced spiritual position, there were sometimes visible in his body the Ashta Sattvika transformations, such as ecstatic crying and bodily trembling, which are symptoms of love of Godhead. It is understood that Maharaj Bharata worshipped the Supreme Lord with mantras mentioned in the Rig Veda, generally known as Gayatri Mantra, which aimed at the Supreme Narayana situated within the sun. Text 1. There is no purport for till 4th one. I'll read and you also chant once only. Shri Shuka Uvacha Bharatastu Mahabhagavataha Yada Bhagavata Avanitala परिपालनाया संचिन्तितः तदनुशासनपरः पंचजनीं विश्वरूपदुहित्रम् उपयेमे. Translation. Shukadev Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. My dear king, Bharat Maharaj was a topmost devotee. Following the orders of his father, who had already decided to install him on the throne, he began to rule the earth accordingly. When Bharat Maharaj ruled the entire globe, he followed the orders of his father and married Panchajani, the daughter of Vishwarupa. Text 2. Tasyam uhava atmajan kartsnina anurupan atmanaha panchajanayamasa bhutadibhir iva bhuta sukshmani sumatim rashtrabhrutam sudarshanam avaranam dhumraketum iti. Translation. Just as the false ego creates the subtle sense objects, Maharaj Bharata created 5 sons in the womb of Panchajani, his wife. These sons were named Sumati, Rashtrabhrita, Sudarshana, Avarana and Dhumraketu. Text 5. Ajanabham nama etad varsham bharatam iti yataha arabhya vyapadishanti. Translation. Formerly, this planet was known as Ajanabha Varsha. But since Maharaj Bharata's reign, it has become known as Bharata Varsha. Short purport. This planet was formerly known as Ajanabha because of the reign of King Nabhi. After Bharat Maharaj ruled the planet, it became celebrated as Bharata Varsha. Text 4, we shall chant together. Sabahuvin mahipatihi pitru pita mahavat uruvatsalataya sve sve karmani vartamanaha prajaha Swadharmam anuvartamanaha paryapalayat. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Bharata was a very learned and experienced king on this earth. He perfectly ruled the citizens, being himself engaged in his own respective duties. Maharaj Bharata was as affectionate to the citizens as his father and grandfather had been. Keeping them engaged in their occupational duties, he ruled the earth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is most important that the chief executive rule the citizens by keeping them fully engaged in their respective occupational duties. Some of the citizens were Brahmanas, some were Kshatriyas, and some were Vaishyas and Shudras. It is the duty of the government to see that the citizens act according to these material divisions for their spiritual advancement. No one should remain unemployed or unoccupied in any way. One must work as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra on the material path. And on the spiritual path, everyone should act as a Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. Although formerly the government was a monarchy, all the kings were very affectionate toward the citizens, and they strictly kept them engaged in their respective duties. Therefore, society was very smoothly conducted. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So this chapter begins with Shukadev Goswami continuing to speak to Maharaj Parikshit. And he begins by saying, Bharatastu maha bhagavato yatha bhagavata avanithala paripalanaya sanchintitaha tad anushasana paraha, etc. So this is actually a continuation of the previous verse, the thought, because the previous thought described Rishabhadeva, who is Bhagavan. And so here, the next verse, Bharatastu Mahabhagavataha, that was Lord Bhagavan, but Bharata tu Mahabhagavataha, the word tu indicates but, and it is contrasting with the previous verse. The previous verse, we may remember, we read in the last class, the concluding verse of the previous chapter, Nityanubhuta Nijalabha Nivrutta Trishnaha Shreyasi Atat Rachanaya Chirasupta Buddhe Lokasya Yah Karunaya Abhayam Atmalokam Akhyan Namo Bhagavate Rishabhaya Tasmai. Bharatastu Maha Bhagavataha Yadha Bhagavata Avanithala Paripalanaya Sanchintitaha. So, previous verse was Rishabha, and in this verse it is Bharata, and the previous verse was the Lord himself, but this was Bharata, who was a great devotee of the Lord. So, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find descriptions of great kings who were great devotees. Mahabhagavata. Bharatastu Mahabhagavataha. He was not just a Bhagavata, but a Mahabhagavata, great devotee. So, in this context, there is one very nice word, instruction, that Srila Prabhupada gave, which I will read out. This was during a class in Los Angeles in 1973. Very, very interesting paragraph, short talk of Prabhupada. We will discuss this. This talk, this class Prabhupada was giving in the context of Parikshit Maharaj being described in the Bhagavatam as also another Mahabhagavata. So like we are reading about Bharata was a Mahabhagavata, Parikshit was also a Mahabhagavata, all great kings. Srimad Bhagavatam describes so many kings like this who were great devotees. So in this context, let's see what Srila Prabhupada says, which is very significant. So Parikshit Maharaj was not an ordinary person. He was Mahabhagavata. Mahim Mahabhagavataha Shashasa. Bhagavataha Shashasa. Mahim Shashasa. Ruled over. A great devotee. It does not mean a great devotee is simply engaged in chanting Hare Krishna mantra. No. A great devotee may be the chief of the executive function of the state. He can become. That is required. Not that only Mahabhagavata required in church or temples. Not that only Mahabhagavata required in church or temples. No. Mahabhagavata required also as the head of the chief executive function. That is also required. Otherwise, how people will be happy? Every field there must be Mahabhagavata. So my Guru Maharaj used to say that when we shall see that the High Court judges are devotees of Krishna, then our preaching will be somewhat forward. So that is the aim of Krishna consciousness movement. That everyone, at least those who are ruling, those who are on the executive function, must be all Mahabhagavatas. Under them everything should be ruled. Then people will be happy. Because they will never do anything unjustly. Their only desire is, Mahabhagavata is, how to give relief to the suffering humanity. That is Mahabhagavata. So Parikshit Maharaj was Mahabhagavata, and therefore he was entrusted to rule over, not an ordinary man. Why I say this is very significant is, we see how Srila Prabhupada points out the relevance of bhakti, relevance of devotion and devotional service, even beyond the framework of religion. Usually bhakti, bhaktas, they are devoted people. They will be in the temples. They will be in the mathas. They'll be in the ashramas. They'll be in the forest. They'll be in some holy place far removed from the society. You see? That's usually the understanding. Usually bhakti is discussed within a religious framework, but Srila Prabhupada points out, no. Such bhaktas who are devoted to the Lord purely and entirely should also be having important roles in the society, like the king or the executive head of the government. You see this statement of Srila Prabhupada? That not only Mahabhagavata should not only be in the temple and the church, meaning in religious institution. And then Prabhupada goes on to say, that is required. Not that only Mahabhagavata required in church or temples. No. Mahabhagavata required also as head of the chief executive function. That is also required. Otherwise, how people will be happy? And then Prabhupada goes on to further expand this thought, this vision of Srila Prabhupada. Every field there must be Mahabhagavata. There must be businessmen, very successful. They should also become Mahabhagavatas. There should be musicians, singers. They should also be Mahabhagavatas. There should be Drama, like we saw yesterday, last few days we are seeing. Drama, dialogue writers, directors, or actors, they should also be Mahabhagavata. There should be filmmakers who are Mahabhagavatas. There should be cooks who are Mahabhagavatas. There should be pujaris, of course, should be Mahabhagavatas in the temples. You see the vision of Srila Prabhupada. Why I am saying this is so special and so wonderful. You see, Srila Prabhupada has demonstrated in the last 25 years that we took one instruction of Srila Prabhupada little seriously, that we should feed children, we should feed anyone who is hungry. Prabhupada even said, a few days back I read in the OAT, one letter Prabhupada wrote to all temple presidents. Let the whole world come. We will feed them and make them happy. So whole world to be fed. See, this was the words of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada had that desire. And we took that a little seriously and worked on it systematically. Again, all different instructions, directions, and arrangements that Srila Prabhupada unfolded for us in the last 25 years. And we have such a big organization called Akshayapatra. Last year, Akshayapatra's total collection was about 850 crores. And some projections our devotee professionals have made, it is going to soon reach 1,000 crores per year. 1 year. We have collected that much money and spent all the money. At the end of the year, deficit, not surplus, deficit, small deficit was there. Everything was used up. Everything and more than what was collected was used up. And it is an organization. There are 9,000 people working. Day and night they are thinking how to feed children. Just see how powerful an Acharya's institute. This is Acharya. Prabhupada is an Acharya who fully deserves that statement. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittete Koriha Aikya. His words, his directions are not his words, Krishna speaking through him. And so, if we take his instruction seriously and work on it, the result is creation of another organization which is focused on one of the aspirations and desires of Srila Prabhupada, fully working on it on a national scale. Now, let us see, Srila Prabhupada is inspiring to do this on a global scale. Don't know what Srila Prabhupada wants. We keep trying. We keep following his instruction. In the same way, this instruction of Srila Prabhupada, that how there should be Mahabhagavatas in every field, also has a similar potential of creating a worldwide institution of focused on creating Mahabhagavatas among the Shreshtas in the world. Because Krishna has said, rest of the world follows, yat yat acharati Shreshtas tat tat evataro janaha. Sayat pramanam kurute lokasthat anuvartate. Yat pramanam kurute. What standards they set, the whole world wants to follow. You see? This was the instruction Srila Prabhupada gave when he had those three couples, and he was dispatching them. He was sending them to London. He said, you should preach to the very well-known people in London, and that will help us. And they took that very seriously, and they got an opportunity to preach to George Harrison, and he made a record, and with that Hare Krishna mantra record, whole Western world was chanting and hearing Hare Krishna. You see the power? Preaching to such celebrities has a multiplying effect to reach the masses. That was another very innovative idea of Srila Prabhupada. And in the same way here Prabhupada is pointing out that how we need Mahabhagavatas in every field. There should be lecturers, professors who are Mahabhagavatas. There should be scientists who are Mahabhagavatas. There should be laborers who are also Mahabhagavatas, every field. Politicians, diplomats, everyone, they should also be Mahabhagavatas. Because, Prabhupada points out, Mahabhagavata, he has got no other. Under them everything should be ruled. Then people will be happy. Because they will never do anything unjustly. There's no question of unjust. There will be perfect justice. People are now, in modern day in our country, it's different parts of the world also, talk about social justice. Social justice movement. But if you have the Mahabhagavatas, they will do everything justly. Their only desire is how to give relief to the suffering humanity. You see here, in the next verse, we read this. Bhagavatam is saying, where is that? Yes, here. Uruvatsalataya. Uru means extensively, highly, very. It is strengthening the word vatsalyataya. Uruvatsalataya. His affection to the prajaha was very genuine, very pure, very intense. Not just some kind of an official. They were powerful kings, but they were also very affectionate to their citizens. They cared for them. And it is talking about Mahipatihi, not one country. It is the whole planet. Mahipatihi. So, this kind of a understanding Bharat Maharaj had. And that is the vision that is presented in the Bhagavatam. So you will find sometimes there are queens who are great Mahabhagavatas, like Kunti Devi, Draupadi. There were ministers are not exactly in the kingly order but connected with the palace, like Vidura. He was a Mahabhagavata. There were children who are Mahabhagavatas. We saw last evening. Prahlad, Dhruva. You see. Then there were simple housewives, Dvijapatnis, who are Mahabhagavatas. So you can see how Bhagavatam is full of examples of Mahabhagavatas in every field. That is the vision. That is the vision. And Prabhupada is saying this is the vision. This should be the objective of the Hare Krishna movement. Such a, very, very special. The way Srila Prabhupada read this Bhagavatam and explained this in the classes. So, one thing. Why is this that the Mahabhagavatas, like the Bhagavatam explains, like Srila Prabhupada explains, how Srila Prabhupada's presentation, of course, he always gave credit to his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who gave credit to his Guru and his Guru, Bhaktivedanta Thakur, and the 6 Goswamis. What happened with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the 6 Goswamis and the subsequent Acharyas, and in the very recent times, that articulation in a more modern context and in English language, what happened was, in Prabhupada's presentation, a very core philosophical question gets an answer. And that core philosophical question, which philosophers and scientists also to some extent, great thinkers of the world have been pondering, not knowing what is the answer. And that is, what is the purpose of this creation and why we all exist? What is the purpose for the existence of this universe? What is the purpose of the existence of every one of us? Why do we exist? What is God's plan? Is that God just randomly created? Or He had a plan? This kind of a philosophical inquiry and understanding, Prabhupada derives from the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. This is another example of how Prabhupada takes this knowledge onto another level, on another bigger canvas of understanding why the universe exists, why humanity exists, why animals exist, why plants exist, why all of this exists. Even many religious people in our country don't see it in this perspective. They see it as that, no, we should be, or we are Brahmanas, we should follow this, we should do this, etc. Some things like that. In temples, in our matha, in our ashram, we should follow this. But in Prabhupada's presentation, very fundamental purpose of the creation is being discussed. In many places, Prabhupada does that. I'll point out one particular verse where this comes out so well in the 3rd chapter purport of the Bhagavad Gita. Towards the end of the 3rd chapter. I'll read the purport. This is in the context of Kama Yeshu, Krodha Yeshu, Rajoguna Samudbhavaha, Mahashano, 337. You'll see how, that's why Prabhupada said we should know his books like a lawyer knows the law books. See, lawyers very expert. They will quote this section, this clause, this case, like that, to justify build their argument in the same way. Prabhupada begins this purport. Every sentence Prabhupada wrote, it is full of spiritual potency, depth, and meaning. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. You see, this is what has happened to all of us. This is not, we should not think that this is some philosophical concept that we all should discuss. It's right, telling about us, every living entity, including me. What's happened to me? What's happened to me is that my eternal love for Krishna was transformed into lust in the association with the mode of passion when I came in contact with the material creation. This happened, describing me. It's describing each one of us. This is what has happened to us. Why there is lust in us? Why are we running after sense gratification? Sense gratification is impelled by lust. Why this lust is there? That lust is actually original love of Krishna. It has become transformed. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in the association with the mode of Rajoguna. Manu Rajoguna samudbhavaha kama yeshu krodha yeshu Rajoguna samudbhavaha udbhavaha samudbhavaha. Next, very nice. Or in other words, the sense of love of God. You see, that sense, that feeling, that kind of an attitude, love for Krishna. Krishna. Each one of us have that love, that relationship with Krishna. This is one of the important things that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches. Although it is there in the Shastra, these things were not highlighted. Or in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust. And Prabhupada gives an example to help us understand. As milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. You see, we are all people with yogurt now. Originally we were milk. That milk came in touch with sour agent and we have become lust. Love has become lust. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, the nature of lust Krishna will soon describe, it can never be satisfied. So when unsatisfied, it turns into wrath, anger, krodha. Wrath is transformed into illusion. When you get angry and you get upset, your proper thinking will go away. Sober thinking will go away. See? So that's why wrath should be under control. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If therefore the modes of passion, instead of being degraded into the modes of ignorance, are elevated to modes of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. You see, so it comes under the pure love of Krishna becomes transformed into lust under the influence of the mode of passion. And if that passionate search for happiness goes on, enjoyment goes on, and it is not satisfied, it degrades into wrath, and wrath into illusion, and the material existence continues. That's what is happening in the world outside, isn't it? We see the world running. On the other hand, if that passion is elevated to Sattva Guna, mode of goodness. How do we do that? By the prescribed method of living and acting. How we live, how we act. There is a prescribed method which will gradually bring us to Sattva Guna. Tadha rajastamo bhavaha kamalobhadayaschaye chetaye thair anaviddham stitham sattve prasidati. Sattvam stitham prasidati. We can become situated in Sattva Guna. Continuing, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada tells about the purpose of the creation. You will see this. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many. Eko bahusyama. It is there in the Upanishads. These statements are there. He was ekaha. Bahusyama. He became many. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many. Why? For his ever-increasing spiritual bliss. That's one of the natures of the Lord. He is ever-increasing. Everything about him is ever-increasing. His bliss is also constantly increasing. That's the nature of an unlimited Lord. That is why, you see, when we think of this in our temples, we often come across in temple management, all different departments will be fighting with each other. I want this devotee, I want this Prabhu, I want that devotee, I want that. Because shortage. We have shortage of devotees. And everyone will be wanting more and more. I want more devotees for my department. So, in this material world, always there is shortage. In the spiritual world, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, we say. Just see, Koti itself is such a big number. This is not even Koti, it is Ananta Koti. The spiritual world is so vast. And we have to know how to work with devotee. And the beauty of the Lord is, the Lord, because He is unlimited, although there are Ananta Koti Vaishnavas, He has individual, particular, unique relation with everyone and He can reciprocate with everyone. In the material world, kings, presidents, prime ministers, they can't do that. They are human beings there after all. Only for a few years we put them up there as a president. They don't have any unlimited. They are mortals like us only. They don't have that power. Whereas the Lord is unlimited. And so, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded Himself into many for His ever-increasing spiritual bliss. And the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. This is a most interesting explanation by Srila Prabhupada. Who are we? We are part and parcel of that spiritual bliss, ever-increasing spiritual bliss of the Lord. We are supposed to be there. We are supposed to be participating in that. Look how degraded we have become. We have come to this world and we are running after sense enjoyment for ourselves. This is the degradation. This is the scale of degradation we have achieved coming into this world. And then further. So, the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. We are actually part and parcel of that Krishna's bliss. He has got a plan and He is expanding. His pleasure is expanding. And we are supposed to be part of that expansion plan of the Lord's expansion of bliss. But they also have, the living entities also have partial independence. But by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. That's why we always encourage service attitude. Because that original service attitude has now become transformed into lording attitude. When the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give a facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities. This material world is created in such a way, living entities, we get an opportunity to fulfill our lustful propensity. In all species of life, there is lust and there is a certain opportunity for fulfillment of those lustful propensities. Animals have, birds have, beasts have, flies have, insects have, even we have. All lustful propensities of different proportions, different varieties. I'll close in a minute. And when they are, so the living entities pursue these lustful propensities. And when they are completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, they will be baffled because it's not going to satisfy us. They will be baffled. And when they are completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. What is happening to me? You see, that this will take many, many lifetime of experience for that understanding to come. That is why we all felt at some stage, what is this? This is not all right in this world. We are running after sense gratification. Whatever extent that realization was, that was a cumulative accumulation of so many lifetime, little by little understanding, trying enjoyment, becoming baffled. What is this? When that streak of inquiry, when that streak of sincere inquiry is there, Lord will sense that because He is seated in the heart of every living entity. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddhesh arjuna tishtati. That Ishvara is tishtati. He is situated in our heart. He senses that and He brings us to the shelter of a pure devotee. The living entities begin to inquire about their real position. This inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, wherein it is said, Atatho Brahma Jignasa, one should inquire into the Supreme, and so on. So, like this, the purpose of creation is the living entities who misused their independence, allowed their love of God to become transformed into lust, and got entangled in the material activities. But for love to happen, independence, freedom is required. Krishna cannot force it on us. So He has created this material world to give us an opportunity to express our lustful propensities. And we try to do that life after life. And it is not going to satisfy us. It will baffle us. And when we are baffled, we begin to think, what is this? What is happening? It may not be fully, none of us really thought about all this, right? Somewhere something was there, and then we started reading Prabhupada books, and Prabhupada started enlightening us. Who are we? Why the world exists? Have you thought about it? Think about it. These are vital questions. And that's how devotional life begins. We will see more. There is some more important things in the fourth verse that we read. We will again read the fourth verse and some of the points Prabhupada has described. We'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.